Tonight, the conclave to choose a new pope is hours away, and we are here in Vatican City to cover it all. How does it all work? The mystery, the intrigue, all of it playing out inside the world's smallest state. And who could we see on that balcony as the next pope?
You must be excited. I mean, you're about to go into conclave. Once in a lifetime, maybe.
We're hearing from those cardinals who will be making that all-important decision behind closed doors. Also overseas, the breaking news between two nuclear powers, missiles fired into Pakistan from India. Ian Pannell is standing by. And we are, of course, tracking other major headlines tonight. Back in the U.S., Canada's new prime minister meets with President Trump and flatly asks him to stop calling the country the 51st state. Much more on the lively Oval Office meeting. And we're learning more about that terrifying outage at Newark International Airport.
They approach you there?
Hear more from that concerning 90 seconds where everything went dark for air traffic controllers as we learn about a new incident at SFO, planes clipping wings. The urgent warning about a criminal network group targeting kids online, building trust before blackmailing them. What the FBI wants parents to know about the shadowy network group called 764. It's an ABC News investigation. And be sure to check your ID, what you need to know just hours ahead of the real ID deadline. Could you be turned away from the airport?
From ABC News, this is Prime with Linsey Davis, reporting tonight from the Vatican.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We are here in Vatican City, just hours from the start of the historic and secretive conclave, and we'll be here to bring you all the key moments live as they happen. But we do begin tonight with the extraordinary scene playing out in the Oval Office today with one of America's closest allies, Canada. The new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, arrived at the White House just days after he won the election. Many say his party ended up on top because of a growing anti-Trump sentiment in Canada and the talk from Trump about the country becoming the 51st state. Prime Minister Mark Carney flatly said in the Oval Office, Canada is not for sale and never will be. Trump pushed back, saying, never say never. We're also following breaking news between those two nuclear powers, Pakistan and India. India firing missiles into Pakistan, and there are reports of casualties. Our chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell, is standing by with more on that in a moment. But first, Chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce leads us off from the White House with more on that tense Oval Office meeting.
Tonight, Canada's new Liberal Prime Minister Mark Carney arriving at the White House just days after he swept to victory on a wave of anti-Trump sentiment, campaigning against the president's tariffs and his pledge to turn Canada into America's 51st state. Just moments before, Trump setting the tone, posting on social media, "Why is America subsidizing Canada? We don't need anything they have other than their friendship." In the Oval Office with Carney looking on, Trump was asked if he still thinks Canada should be part of the U.S.
Well, I still believe that, but you know, it takes two to tango, right? I think that there are tremendous benefits to the Canadian citizens, tremendously lower taxes, free military, which honestly we give you essentially anyway because we're protecting Canada if you ever had a problem. But I think it would really be a wonderful marriage because it's two places that get along very well. They like each other a lot.
Well, if I may, as you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale. Ever.
But Trump not ready to accept that.
But never say never. Never say never.
What? As the meeting grew increasingly tense, reporters pressing.
If Canadians don't want it, would you respect that?
Sure, I would. But this is not necessarily a one-day deal. This is over a period of time they have to make that decision. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may. If respectfully, Canadians' view on this is not going to change on the 51st state.
Trump has imposed stiff tariffs on most Canadian goods, Canada retaliating with a 25% tariff on more than $40 billion in U.S. products, everything from orange juice to appliances. Canadian liquor stores taking American whiskey off the shelves. The two leaders say they are hoping to make a deal, but Trump says he's not ready yet.
Is there anything he could say to you in the course of your meetings with him today that would get you to lift tariffs on Canada?
No.
Why not?
Just the way it is.
Mary Bruce joins us now from the White House. Mary, what have both leaders said after this first encounter at the White House?
Well, Lindsay, at a press conference later, Carney said he told President Trump point blank to stop calling Canada the 51st state. We've asked, but so far, no word on how Trump responded to that. And meanwhile, our latest ABC News Washington Post Ipsos poll shows that 86% of Americans oppose the U.S. taking control of Canada. Lindsay.
All right, Mary Bruce for us from the White House. Thanks so much, Mary. Breaking news now happening in the middle of the night in Asia. India firing missiles into Pakistan. This comes as tensions are clearly rising between the two nuclear powers. Our chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell, is following this and joins us now from London. Ian, give us the very latest on this very concerning situation.
Yeah, you're right, Lindsay. I mean, deeply worrying development with these two nuclear-armed nations exchanging fire tonight. The Indian Armed Forces launching multiple missiles into Pakistan against what it calls terrorist infrastructure. The strike comes in the wake, of course, of that deadly terror attack on tourists in India-controlled Kashmir. That was last month. 26 were killed there. India, though, insisting that its actions have been restrained, that no Pakistani military facilities were targeted. But Pakistan tonight calling it an act of war, confirming at least 5 locations were hit, including, 3 people were killed, injuring more than 10. It says it's now attacking India from air and from land. Lindsay?
And Ian, 2 nuclear powers here. What are the risks that this escalates further?
Yeah, right. I think that's the biggest fear for many people, not just the two countries involved. The two nations have fought 3 major wars, clashed multiple times since partition in 1947. The US and others have been urging restraint after the attack in Kashmir. Tonight, President Trump only saying he hopes it ends quickly, but the risks of greater escalation, I think, are very real. Many will hope, as in previous occasions, it can be contained. Lindsay?
Certainly very tense there, Ian. Thank you. Now to the new travel trouble at Newark Airport and across the country. At San Francisco's airport, 2 crowded United passenger jets clipped wings as they prepared for flights overseas. Meanwhile, at Newark, more than 894 flights have been canceled since that air traffic control outage last Monday. The FAA is now planning to move air traffic controllers from around the country to help out there. Matt Rivers is in Newark tonight.
Tonight, 2 United passenger jets clipping wings as one of the planes pushed back from the gate in San Francisco.
That's affirmative. There's a possible collision in between the hours.
Overnight, this flight headed to Sydney, striking another bound for Hong Kong. No injuries reported, but hundreds of passengers forced to deplane. It's just the latest in what's been a brutal week for the airline, forced to cancel hundreds of flights at East Coast hub Newark Airport, beleaguered by an air traffic control shortage. Some controllers taking medical leave after what they called a, quote, traumatic event. An air traffic control system outage last Monday, leaving them unable to see, hear, or speak with planes in the air packed with passengers for 60 to 90 seconds. In newly obtained audio, one pilot trying to make contact met by silence.
Approach you there.
Communications coming back online, but controllers unable to see the planes on radar.
We don't have a radar, so I don't know where you are.
Today, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy promising to update the decades-old infrastructure.
We are going to fix it. We are going to build a brand new system for all of you and your families and the American people.
But controller shortages, bad weather, and runway construction still plaguing Newark flyers. And long lines at driver's license offices across the country. Starting tomorrow, travelers flying domestically will be required to have a real ID license or state identification card or a passport, or they will face extra screening and questioning at the security checkpoint.
If it's not compliant, they may be diverted to a different line, have an extra step, but people will be allowed to fly.
All right, good to hear that. Our thanks to Matt Rivers. Here at the Vatican, the secret conclave is set to begin in just hours. The Sistine Chapel, where the cardinals will meet, has been secured tonight. So how long will it take to elect a new pope? Our chief international correspondent, James Longman, is here with me at the Vatican getting those answers. We'll have additional insights from ABC contributor Colleen Dully and reporter Britt Clennett in the Philippines. Could a Filipino cardinal be the next pope? But first, our James Longman.
We are hours away tonight from one of the world's most ancient rituals, the conclave to choose the next pope. Cardinals from around the world
pray for us.
Together for one last pre-conclave meeting today, performing two final acts, breaking Pope Francis's fisherman ring and destroying his papal seal. Tomorrow, proceedings will begin with a mass at St. Peter's Basilica at 10 a.m. local, 4 a.m. Eastern. Then the 133 voting cardinals will file into the Sistine Chapel by 4:30 p.m. Rome time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, and under the vaulted magnificence of Michelangelo's 500-year-old frescoes, they will take their solemn vow of secrecy. No phones, no computers, no televisions, completely isolated from the outside world. Then the Master of Ceremonies says those famous words, extra omnes, everybody out. The doors are then closed and the conclave is expected to start voting around 5 p.m. Rome time. That's 11 a.m. Eastern. New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan says the first vote could be revealing.
Now, I have to tell you, that first ballot is so significant because then you see who are the leaders.
This is the most diverse conclave ever, and 80% of the cardinal electors were appointed by Francis, like Cardinal Luis Herrera from Ecuador, chosen by Francis just 4 months ago.
You must be excited. I mean, you're about to go into conclave. Once in a lifetime, maybe.
It's a gift, he says, a blessing. I never dreamed of doing this in my life. He wants a pope as personable as Francis.
So it's men like this that really personify Francis's church, men from all four corners of the earth. This is the face of Francis's church.
The cardinals will cast secret ballots up to 4 times a day. A candidate must win 2/3 majority, and because of the timing, only one vote is expected tomorrow. Ballots will be burned twice a day in the following days. If black smoke is released from the newly installed chimney, no winner. White smoke means a new pope has been elected. And today, one cardinal telling me he'd be surprised if we don't have a new pope by Friday.
If on Friday night the pope is not elected, it would be that something unexpected has happened.
And James Longman joins us now. So great to be here with you. I know you've been chasing the Cardinals down the last few days. What kind of insight can you give us?
Yeah, that's right. We've been chasing them all across St. Peter's Square. The place where they've been having their meetings has been just to the left of the Basilica there. In there, that's where the congregations have been taking place. And these are really important. People might remember Cardinal Bergoglio before he became Francis, of course. It was in his congregation, and it was a speech that he gave that propelled him into the conclave. He was not really in the mix until that speech. So congregations are important. They've been important this week for one big reason. The favourite, Parolin, the Secretary of State, all the bookies, I've just checked now, he's still the #1 favourite. One of his main aides this week, according to reports, got up in this congregation and criticised Francis quite extremely. Now, this isn't something that people really expected among the cardinals. So this is seen as perhaps now pouring cold water on Parolin's chances. That, plus there was a bulletin out today which basically paraphrased what the cardinals are looking for. They talked a lot about a pastoral candidate. Again, that is not Parolin. Parolin has never really run a parish. So this is a sign perhaps of what we might be looking at going into conclave. Look, it's our job to read the tea leaves. We obviously have no idea what they're thinking, but that does give us some insight into how important these congregations have been. That cardinal, though, I did speak to, that was the Archbishop of Algiers, he said if there's no pope by Friday, something has gone a bit wrong. He thinks that would be an unexpected thing to happen. So it feels like there's some consensus, but again, we just got to be here, we've got to be watching that.
And if there's no pope by Friday, then Saturday they would take a day of rest and prayer.
That's right. They'd take a moment and then they go back to it. But I mean, if it goes longer and longer and longer, the impression might be that actually they choose an older pope, an older cardinal to become pope, so that if there's no consensus, they get a short pontificate and they can all come back here in 5 years' time.
All right, so helpful. Glad you are here with us for all this. James Longman, our appreciation to you. We know the cardinals here at the Vatican, both voting and non-voting, have already spent many days together, meeting in congregations, getting to know each other, and critically exchanging ideas about the issues facing the church and the world. Each cardinal is traditionally given the opportunity to make a brief speech, which of course is important when assessing prospective candidates. Joining us now is ABC News contributor Colleen Dulle, associate editor of America Magazine and host of the very popular podcast Inside the Vatican. Thank you so much for joining us, Colleen. Okay, so give us a sense for Vatican watchers like yourself. How do you get a sense of who's top of mind and who is capable, as they say?
Sure. So, I mean, certainly we make these lists based on our conversations with cardinals. We all build these relationships over time so that in a moment like this we can get some information. There are also some frameworks that we use. So certainly age is a big guide. You don't want somebody over 80. You want somebody who has the energy to be pope.
At the same time, not too young.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody wants a long papacy either. So probably under 70 is a little too young. Geography is an important question. The languages they speak are an important question. And likewise, continuity with the previous pope. Is it somebody who will continue the Francis vision or somebody who will maybe go a different direction?
And you mentioned language being important. Of course, it's not only the language that you actually speak, but the language you speak as far as the vision for the church.
Sure, of course.
And going forward, is this going to be a referendum on Pope Francis? Do they want more of the same? Give us a sense, as far as we know, a lot of them do speak Italian, but are there translators inside the conclave or around the edges as well to help people understand?
Sure, not inside the conclave. There have been inside of the cardinals' meetings before the conclave, but once they go in, no, there are no translators. And so what you'll get for the cardinals who aren't so good at Italian is kind of other cardinals helping them out. Certainly, most of them have at least an understanding of Italian, even if they don't make sentences very well. And then also they'll find common languages among themselves for their discussions.
By and large, once inside the conclave, it's really more prayer, voting, not a lot of politicking.
Right.
Where does the politicking take place?
Sure, that would be in the Casa Santa Marta. So this is the Vatican guest house where they're equally locked down. There are no communications devices. And these are not like big bombastic revelations like in the movie Conclave, right? They're usually quieter conversations, negotiations, that sort of thing.
We heard in James Longman's package that one of the cardinals said he would be surprised if we do not have a new pope by Friday. Is that your understanding as well?
I would say by or on Friday. Yeah, I'm certainly hearing like 2 to 3 days from most people, certainly not past Saturday. I think there's a real sense from among the cardinals I've been hearing that they want to have a new pope to do the Sunday Angelus, which is the pope's traditional Sunday midday appearance at the window right up there.
Okay. Do you think that there may be surprises, or typically when you have those front runners, are one of the maybe top 7 normally the person you see come out on the balcony?
I think top 7 is an accurate count for this one. It's a really weird conclave, though. It's hard to call even for the most experienced people because this time you have 2 clear front runners, right? Cardinal Tagle and Cardinal Parolin.
You mentioned 2 names. Some of the front runners are kind of caught up in the conspiracy that they didn't do enough with regard to the sexual abuse scandal inside the Catholic Church. How much of a scarlet letter is that potentially?
Yeah, it kind of depends on the situation. I think that, there are sort of competing senses, right? Because if somebody maybe has some allegations that they mishandled things, if they've already gone through that in the press, they're seen as having already been vetted. Whereas on the other hand, if somebody's record looks clean, well, the question is what skeletons might be in their closet. So it's complicated and kind of messy.
We're understanding some of that inside politics there. Colleen, thank you so much. Really appreciate your insight.
Yeah.
And as we wait for that first vote to happen in just a matter of hours, you are looking at the chimney where the smoke will start pouring out tomorrow, white or black. And attention is now heavily on the key candidates in this process. Filipino Cardinal Luis Tagle, the Archbishop of Manila, is one of them, emerging as a frontrunner to be the next pope. He was appointed by Pope Francis to lead an office in the Vatican that focuses on evangelization. For more on what this could mean for the Philippines, a country where 80% of the population is Catholic, and also what it could mean for the church at large, we have correspondent Britt Clennett joining us now live from Manila. Britt, I know you've talked to churchgoers and people on the ground there in Manila. How do they describe Cardinal Tagle, their Archbishop?
Hi, Lindsay. Well, I'm actually speaking to you from the church where Cardinal Tagle served as Archbishop for 8 years. And even in that time, Lindsay, he hosted Pope Francis. He's actually even dubbed the Asian Pope Francis for his advocacy for the poor and marginalized people. He's 67 years old and he's very much seen as open-minded on issues like treatment of LGBTQ members of the church, but not necessarily someone who would rock the boat with any controversial rhetoric in any way. Another Filipino contender has also interestingly emerged as a kind of dark horse in this race, Cardinal Pablo David. He served for less time than Tagle, but he was more critical of the controversial crackdown on drugs here by former President Duterte. Lindsay?
And just how hopeful are they about Tagle as possibly the next pope?
Yeah, look, I think many people here are kind of hesitant to voice any kind of hope for a particular candidate out loud, with local priests saying that people should avoid campaigning for particular contenders. I want to take you to an interview I did with a woman who was praying here a little earlier to hear what she had to say about it.
It is not about who is the most popular, but I think it will be guided by the Holy Spirit. So whoever will be chosen by the Holy Spirit, then I think it will be supported by the Catholics, especially the Filipinos.
But of course, we will be very happy if the next pope is from the Philippines, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
I will be.
Of course, she says. Now, they say that no matter who the next pope is, their faith will remain strong, Lindsay.
Okay, all right. Britt Clennett for us. Thank you so much in Manila. A jury is expected to be seated Wednesday in the racketeering and sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs. The mogul is facing serious charges and serious time. Aaron Katersky has a look at what led us to this moment and what might happen during the trial.
For decades, he was a music industry titan.
He's so handsome.
Known for hits like Been Around the World and launching careers like those of Mary J. Blige and Biggie Smalls and making hip-hop mainstream.
Diddy finally has the key to the city!
With his own record label, reality TV franchises, fashion brand, vodka, tequila, and a cable television channel, Sean Diddy Combs became a fixture on red carpets and in pop culture. Now, the self-proclaimed bad boy for life is facing the chance of life in prison as he goes on trial in New York on charges of sex trafficking, racketeering conspiracy, and interstate transportation for prostitution.
Probably one of the most famous people in the world. How does that inform his trial?
If you have been anywhere but under a rock in the last 2 to 3 decades or so, you either know his work directly or indirectly. And a lot of people have a difficulty of separating art from the person. And so will there be, to some degree, a connection of that for people that will be hard to separate? Absolutely.
Combs has pleaded not guilty.
He's going to fight this with all of his energy and all of his might.
Federal authorities began investigating Combs after his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, brought a civil lawsuit against him. Combs settled one day after the lawsuit was filed with no admission of guilt. Ventura claimed in the lawsuit that Combs physically, sexually, and emotionally abused her during their on and off relationship. Ventura is expected to be a key witness for the prosecution.
Is Cassie Ventura the star witness?
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why I say that is you take Cassie Ventura's civil lawsuit, you take this federal indictment, and you see so much overlap between the two of them. I think it's Cassie.
The trial will also include testimony from 3 other alleged victims who have not been identified. 2 of those victims will be allowed to keep their identities concealed during trial. Combs is accused of abusing, threatening, and coercing the victims to participate in elaborate, drug-fueled orgies with male prostitutes that he called freak-offs.
He used the embarrassing and sensitive recordings he made of the freak-offs as collateral against the victims.
From what we know, the defense strategy is Sean Combs was a swinger, and bringing a third party or a fourth party or extra people into the bedroom in a consensual relationship is no crime.
Yeah, and I think that's the move. When you separate white parties from freak-offs, when you separate criminality from consensual sex that might not be as mainstream as especially the SDNY is, you take Sean Combs, he is in no way, shape, or form the average person in anything. And so why should the act that so many people do between consenting adults be as average or normal for him?
So then is the prosecution's job as simple as, seriously?
I mean, seriously, and listen to them. They didn't sign up for this. Who would sign up for this? Look at the evidence, look at the statements, look at the pictures if they have them. Look at the text messages in close in time about them describing these events.
Federal officers say they found what they believe is evidence of the so-called freak-offs when they raided 2 of Combs's homes last year, including drugs and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. Authorities say they also found firearms with defaced serial numbers.
There were these raids of his homes in Miami and in Los Angeles. There were guns drawn. Does any of that matter at trial? Or is just the result of all that, the evidence that was collected, what matters?
When you tell, I think, the average person or juror that DHS or law enforcement showed up to Diddy's home with like Kevlar and body armor, I think the average person thinks, well, that's a really bad person. And so whether people want to admit it or not, they're going to infer criminality just based on how law enforcement operated in that. But the tangible should be, to your point, what was recovered.
The defense has tried to keep some of the evidence out, including this surveillance video first obtained by CNN that shows Combs kicking and dragging Ventura in a Los Angeles hotel. Combs' attorneys argued the video had been manipulated, a claim CNN denied. They've also described the video as depicting the end of an otherwise loving relationship.
Is there any way to look at what's on the video and see it the way the defense does, that this is the unfortunate end of a loving relationship?
Yes, but it's going to take some tightrope walking, threading the needle. There's an argument that he is guilty of something, but not guilty of what he's accused of.
The judge decided the video can be used. When he's not in court, Combs is incarcerated at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, a far cry from the lavish waterfront mansions Combs once called home.
Sean Combs was denied bail because prosecutors said he intimidated witnesses. Several judges agreed that part of his MO, as prosecutors laid it out, was to intimidate the people into silence. Is that why he's incarcerated?
He's in MDC. He allegedly got a cell phone at some point in time. He was using another inmate's, let's call it for lack of a better term, like a serial number, where you can dial in and use their number so you can't detect whether or not Sean Combs is using that phone or someone else. And it was that he had almost a campaign where he's trying to influence individuals. And I think all of that, the government said, he can't even follow the rules when he's incarcerated. What rules can we create that when he is out on some amount of bond or bail, that he'll follow those rules?
Our thanks to Aaron Katursky for that. The Supreme Court has ruled that the Trump administration can move forward with a ban on transgender service members in the military for now. The action lifts a lower court injunction against the policy when a judge deemed it an unsupported, dramatic, and facially unfair exclusionary policy. The Supreme Court did not explain its decision other than to say that the order would expire if the justices ultimately decided to take up the case. Motown legend Smokey Robinson is facing allegations of sexual misconduct. 4 women have come forward to file a $50 million lawsuit against him. The complaint accuses the 85-year-old singer of alleged sexual battery, false imprisonment, and a hostile work environment. Robinson and his representatives have yet to comment. Coming up, police break into the University of Washington after students took over one of the buildings. But first, the ABC News investigation into the shadowy network called 764, targeting kids online, building trust before then blackmailing them, often demanding violent and sexual content from them. The FBI is now sounding the alarm.
They will encourage them sometimes to commit suicide. They will encourage them to do cutting. They will encourage them to harm their pets.
They're using basically psychological warfare on children.
That's right. They gain the trust.
Welcome back, everyone. We turn now to an urgent FBI warning about a terrifying criminal network targeting kids where they should be safest, at home. ABC News joins with some of our owned and affiliate stations across the country to investigate the escalating threat of something called 764, a growing online network targeting children across the country. Our Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas takes the lead on this important story.
Hello.
I have placed 2 explosives inside of Rockville High School, okay? And if they fail to detonate, I'm just going to shoot every kid I see, okay?
This call was a hoax, but part of a series of nightmare threats terrorizing Vernon, Connecticut. Investigators determining the threats came from overseas, but with the help of a teenage girl living right in town.
He was doing these threats with her knowledge and with some of her input.
Both of them involved in a shadowy online global network called 764, which wants governments toppled and the world in chaos.
There's no rules, there's no boundaries. It's just causing as much chaos and terror.
But which also targets kids on social media and gaming platforms, befriending them before demanding violent and sexual content from them.
They will encourage them sometimes to commit suicide. They will encourage them to do cutting. They will encourage them to harm their pets.
They're using basically psychological warfare on children.
That's right. They gain the trust, and then they continue to build that trust to the point where they have power and the ability to blackmail the child, basically.
They also often glorify other violent ideologies like neo-Nazism or Satanism.
They want to desensitize these young people so that nothing really disturbs them anymore.
The FBI tells ABC News in an exclusive interview that it has more than 250 open investigations tied to the 764 network, reaching all 55 field offices across the nation. Nearly a dozen others have already been charged, including a young Arkansas man seen here being arrested on unrelated charges.
Man, this guy's got some weird stuff in his car, bro.
But now pleading guilty to plotting to murder a 14-year-old girl in a separate case when she stopped complying with his demands. In another case, a 19-year-old from Tampa amassed a collection of over 8,000 videos and images that the Justice Department has called some of the most horrific evil content on the internet. He organized them into folders with titles such as 764, KKK racist, even ISIS, and trophies depicting the victims who carved his name into their bodies.
The more gore, the more violence, that raises their stature within the group. So it's sort of a badge of honor to actually do the most harm to victims.
Back in Connecticut, that teenage girl thought the hoaxer was her boyfriend. He convinced her to share pornography and create 764-related content like this Barbie doll with the group's name written on its forehead.
It was very difficult to process. I wanted to scream, "Not my child."
ABC News agreed to alter the faces and voices of the parents of the teenage girl.
Before it started, she was a child who was on the honor roll. She had a lot of friends, and then slowly that started to change.
When the girl began to resist demands, her family says the extortion and threats against her ramped up. They were targeted with something called swatting, where prank calls to emergency services try to get law enforcement to respond in an effort to intimidate the other party.
We're getting phone calls from the police that there were supposedly domestic issues going on in the house. One time they came over with a whole SWAT team with guns.
These actors will go after their victims in multiple ways. If they don't get compliance, they might do those hoax calls and get law enforcement sent to their door.
The teenager eventually was arrested, charged with engaging in a conspiracy to direct those threats at the school.
It is my belief that, at least initially, this child and many children are victimized. And as part of their victimization, they themselves become manipulators and involved and participate in the same things for fear of extortion.
She did cooperate with law enforcement, and her case is nearly resolved. Today in therapy and working to rebuild her life.
And now she's back on track, back to having friends, back to attending activities, and she's having pretty much a normal life.
Do we consider her a victim or a participant?
Depending on who you ask, the answer may be different.
So you sometimes have victims who then become subjects themselves because they start to go out and perpetrate acts on behalf of the individual who victimized them.
The parents of that teenage girl hoping that what happened to her family can be a cautionary tale for others.
If we can help just one family, then it's worth it.
I can't turn off the investigator in me, whether I'm working or whether I'm not working. You can't turn that off, so you're always thinking about it.
What's your message?
There are a lot of actors out there that are committing these acts and are encouraging this type of behaviors. It's everywhere, it's in every community. We harp on internet safety. You have to know what your children are doing on applications, on games.
And he says, look out for warning signs.
Changes in diet, changes in activity, hobbies, secluding themselves in the room, any evidence of self-harm, questionable injuries to family animals. Just be on the lookout for any of those things that are alarming, and just have in the back of your mind that this may all be a result of what is happening online.
A lot of concerns for parents to be on the lookout for. Our thanks to Pierre Thomas. Coming up, we have much more coverage here in Vatican City of the conclave set to get underway. We're talking with cardinals just hours before they head inside for that secretive process. And the real ID deadline is looming. Could you be turned away from flying as soon as tomorrow? We have all the details by the numbers. Welcome back, everyone. You've been warned for decades this day was coming. The day when your state's standard-issued driver's license would not be sufficient to get you through airport security. You'd need a passport or a federally standardized and approved real ID issued by your state. Well, that day is Wednesday, May 7th. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says travelers showing up tomorrow without real ID will have to go through additional screening, and that could cause delays. Tonight, the Real ID's complicated history by the numbers. The Real ID Act was passed by Congress and signed by President Bush in 2005. That was 20 years ago, forcing the federal government to set security standards for states' driver's licenses and other ID cards. The act came out of the 9/11 hijackings, after which the federal government realized most states' security standards and technologies just weren't cutting it. The deadline for Real ID implementation has already been pushed off 3 times by the TSA due to the pandemic, but adoption has also been slow. The Department of Homeland Security estimated in January that only 61% of licenses and IDs would be compliant by this week. And according to a TSA spokesperson, last month, only 81% of travelers were using real or other compliant IDs like passports at checkpoints. Simply put, the real IDs are more expensive to produce, and some states were passing on those costs to reluctant residents, charging the ballpark of $30 more for the real IDs. Still ahead, all voting cardinals are now in Rome for the conclave, and we talked to 3 of them about the factors being considered in choosing the new pope, from the part of the globe they hail from to how prospective candidates might handle the challenges that lie ahead. And staying in Rome, we go inside a popular rosary business and the painstaking personal touches that go into making each one. The race to rescue a choking toddler, the reason a student group gave for occupying a building in protest, and the horse you will not see on the list at this year's Preakness. These stories and more in tonight's Rundown.
Quick-thinking officers with the Tampa Police Department saved a toddler from choking to death in a terrifying moment.
He's choking, bro! He's choking!
Officers quickly grabbed the child from his parent and started giving firm back blows to try to clear the airway. After about a minute, the toddler regained his breath and started talking to the officers.
You all right? Yeah. Okay. Good. It was a little tomato.
More than 25 people were arrested after a group occupied an academic building at the University of Washington, demanding the school sever ties with Boeing as the war in Gaza continues, according to the university and a spokesperson for the group. Boeing, an airplane manufacturer and one of the largest defense companies in the United States, has a long history with the University of Washington and provides weapons to the Defense Department for military operations. The university said about 30 people were arrested on charges that include trespassing, property destruction, and disorderly conduct. U.S. Coast Guard rescued a man aboard a cruise ship who was experiencing stroke-like symptoms. Video shows the moment a member of the Coast Guard lowers down onto the boat with the basket before safely pulling the man up into a helicopter hovering just above the bow of the ship. The Coast Guard said the man was taken to a nearby hospital for further evaluation. 7 people were shot at an Oklahoma City bar where fans were gathered to watch the Thunder Nuggets NBA playoff game on Monday night, police said. 7 people were hit by gunfire and 2 others were hurt from flying glass. Of the 7 victims struck by bullets, 4 were seriously wounded, but everyone is expected to survive, police said. Authorities said no arrests have been made in connection with the shooting. The U.S. trade deficit was higher than ever thanks to consumers and businesses stockpiling products trying to get ahead of President Trump's tariffs. The trade deficit measures the difference between the value of goods and services the U.S. sells to foreign countries against what the U.S. buys. In March, that number was just under $70 billion. After a win at the Kentucky Derby, Sovereignty will not race in the Preakness, according to race officials. That announcement means for the 7th year in a row, there will be no Triple Crown contender. It's unclear if the racehorse will compete in the final leg of the Triple Crown at the Belmont Stakes this summer.
We're just a few hours away here in Vatican City from the Cardinals taking an oath of secrecy before they are locked in for conclave. We have the most cardinals in the history of the Catholic Church, and from all corners of the globe. Our Inés de la Cuatara got a chance to talk to some just before they were sequestered from the rest of the world.
With just hours to go until that secretive conclave, all eyes on the Church's cardinals, who have been sworn in and will soon hunker down inside the Sistine Chapel to elect a new pope. Many of them getting the celebrity treatment, mobbed by reporters tracking their every move. We sat down with Cardinal Chibli Langlois, the first and only cardinal from Haiti, appointed by Pope Francis in 2014. He says this pre-conclave period has been crucial.
Nous avons besoin du temps de nous fraterniser, de nous connaître. En réalité, pour le moment, c'est ça.
It'll be part of Pope Francis's legacy, his efforts to appoint a diverse range of new cardinals from around the world, from Haiti, like Langlois, to Papua New Guinea. Swedish Cardinal Arborelius, the first ever cardinal from Scandinavia, also appointed by Pope Francis, says that's precisely why he's expecting a longer conclave.
It was a gift of Pope Francis that he looked for people in the periphery, Sweden, Mongolia, and so. But that also means that we don't know each other so closely. But hopefully, in a few days, we will come closer to a good decision.
Locked away inside the Sistine Chapel and Santa Marta, the cardinals will vote up to 4 times a day until they reach a 2/3 consensus. While it's the Italian cardinals currently topping the list of who could be next pope, Arborelius tells us Cardinal Parolin was the name that was initially on everyone's lips, but that things have since changed.
The church is a global church, and the center of the church has gone away from Europe and the Western world to Africa and Asia. So I wouldn't be surprised if it would be an African or Asian cardinal, because somehow that's where the church is more alive, more dynamic.
Arborelius' own name has come up.
I must confess I was so shocked. First heard it from France. It was an article in Le Figaro. It's been a bit tiring and a bit annoying trying to explain that I'm not a candidate. There might be some single people who would like, but it's very unlikely that they will choose someone from the secular and northern part of Europe.
Pope Francis appointed 108 of the voting cardinals, including 27 from countries that had never had a cardinal before. Langlois says it's impossible to talk about the next pope without talking about Pope Francis.
Le fait que le pape François a ouvert ce chantier de la transformation, du moins de la transparence au niveau de la gouvernance de l'Église. Il faudra tenir compte de tout ça dans les jours à venir. Il faut compléter ce qu'il a commencé.
He wants someone who will be able to tackle new challenges facing the church in this modern era, citing the child sex abuse scandal, interreligious dialogue, and outreach to younger generations as issues that are top of mind.
Voyez-vous? Donc si on cherche à connaître ce qui attend le prochain pape au niveau de l'Église, à l'intérieur de l'Église et au niveau du monde, eh bien ça va pouvoir guider en quelque sorte le prochain pape.
For Canada's Cardinal Michael Cherney, another Francis appointee, the church also needs to think about technology and global unrest.
But as we're going forward, what strikes us is the new challenges. Just take AI for one example, the proliferating wars are another, the climate crisis. These are all things in which the church is involved because we're everywhere, and these are the things that are affecting people's lives.
Whatever happens, whether the next pope is someone whose views align with Pope Francis or possibly a more conservative pope, Cardinal Czerny is urging the faithful not to worry.
Every time there's a new Holy Father, there's this certain anxiety or disorientation. Right now is a feeling of emptiness, an empty time. So I know there's reasons maybe to feel a bit anxious, but there's no reason for anxiety. Pray and be hopeful, and when we discover who is the new Holy Father, let's all rally to help him.
So many prayerful for that. Our thanks to Inez. And finally tonight, from here in Vatican City, our Maggie Rulli has the story of a family-owned business where rosaries are made by hand, and they might just be used in a matter of hours inside the conclave.
Okay, so I cut the cord first, and I start putting in 10 beads.
One for each Hail Mary.
With every bead, Daniela says a prayer.
They have to be 10, and sometimes I'm afraid to miss a bit, so I count them many times.
Sending her rosaries and her prayers to thousands of people around the world.
I make the rosary praying, and I pray for the person who's going to receive the rosary. And I pray also that the person will receive the rosary, because once in a while packages get lost.
Daniela started Minette Rosari with her husband in 2008, first by just posting her rosaries on social media.
People started asking to buy them. So we decided to start a business, and actually a lot of friends and family told us, you're going to close very soon because people don't pray. On the contrary, people pray, and because prayer is a need for a Catholic.
To pray with a rosary is almost like meditation. You repeat prayers as your hands move over the beads, following along with the 10 beads for 10 Hail Marys and then the Glory Be, before repeating that 5 times. Daniela explains that a rosary is personal, and she shows me how to choose one that feels right. First, the beads.
It's important to us to feel the rosary, because you have
personal choice.
Yes, you have to keep it in your hands for at least 30 minutes a day.
Then, medallions that represent devotions.
For example, Saint Benedict, which is the patron saint of Europe. This is Our Lady of Sorrows. This is from Sicily, Madonna di Scicli, Madonna delle Milizie.
I like this one. She looks very powerful.
Yes, and powerful, strong. And this is called a combat rosary, because this type of rosary was given to the soldiers during the First World War.
Used to help focus your prayers.
The rosary is also a spiritual help for the person who's going to pray with that particular rosary.
The rosaries are then strung together, Daniela often using parachute cord.
A rosary is something that has to be used, no? So it must be precious in some way, but materials need to be resistant and durable.
Something more that now may be in the Vatican.
So people have purchased your rosaries for cardinals, for the Pope, which means they could be inside Vatican City. They could be even in the Conclave.
Yes, yeah. Could be.
What's it like for you to know that? That's an amazing piece of history.
Yes. Yes, you made me think about that. Yeah. I wasn't thinking about that. Could be possible. Could be possible, yes.
That is the belief that anything is possible with the power of prayer. Our thanks to Maggie for that. That is our show for this hour here in Vatican City. I'm Linsey Davis. ABC News is here with complete coverage of the conclave. I'm here along with David Muir and the rest of the team every step of the way. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Have a good night.